Welcome, everybody, to this deep dive, and this one is really exciting, especially if you're getting ready for those UPSC exams. We're going to be talking all about Jainism today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. Jainism is fascinating and so relevant even today.
Yeah, it's a really old tradition, 6th century BC. Just imagine ancient India.
Ancient India, yeah. Lots of changes happening, new ideas popping up, Vedic religion, with its rituals and social order. It was the dominant force. But, well, let's just say not everyone was feeling it.
So people were ready for something different.
Yeah, something more, or maybe something simpler. You can imagine people feeling a bit lost in all those elaborate rituals or, a bit skeptical of the power of the priests.
So they were seeking a new path, a different way to connect with the spiritual side of things.
Absolutely. And that's where these Shramana traditions come in. Think of them as the rebels, the seekers going against the grain.
Asceticism, self-discovery, finding enlightenment outside the established norms.
Yeah, rejecting material wealth, focusing on inner transformation. It was a huge shift in thinking.
And this is where Jainism steps onto the stage, right?
Yeah.
Not just another religion, but like a whole new way of looking at life, liberation, the universe, everything.
Right on. And it's not just one idea or one person. It's a whole lineage, a chain of these amazing beings called Tirthankaras.
Tirthankars, the ones who ford the river to get the liberation. There are 24 of them.
24 enlightened souls who broke free from the cycle of rebirth. Imagine that.
So they're like spiritual trailblazers, showing the way for others. And I think for this deep dive, we're focusing on the last two, right? Parsvanatha and Mahavir.
Yeah, those are the ones we have historical confirmation for. Not just mythical figures, but actual people who lived and breathed.
And Parsvanatha, he's the one with this unique idea about matter being eternal. We'll definitely have to unpack that later. But first, let's get to Mahavira. Now, that's a story that could rival any epic drama.
Talk about a life-changing decision.
Born a prince, right? Everything handed to him on a silver platter. But then at 30, he walks away from it all.
Yep. It makes you wonder, what could possibly make someone give up that kind of life?
Right. So what happened?
Well, after renouncing everything, Mahavira spent 12 years in intense spiritual practices, like hardcore training for the soul. That's where things get really interesting, pushing boundaries, confronting his inner demons, striving for liberation.
Wow, 12 years. It sounds almost superhuman.
And at the end of that incredible journey, he achieved Kaivalya.
Kaivalya, which means
supreme knowledge, total liberation.
It's a pretty powerful concept. And, it makes me think about our own lives. I mean, don't we all have that desire deep down to find meaning, to overcome our limitations, to break free from what's holding us back?
It's a universal human longing, for sure. But Jainism isn't all about individual enlightenment. It's got this strong ethical core as well, walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
And that's where the Pancha Mahavratas come in, right?
Exactly. The 5 great vows that guide Jains towards a life of harmony and liberation.
Okay, 5 vows. That sounds pretty serious. Is it all or nothing, or can, regular people who aren't monks follow them too?
Great question. It's not meant to be overwhelming. You see, Jainism recognizes that different people have different capacities and are at different stages in their spiritual journey, so there are variations for householders.
Okay, so there's like a hardcore version and a more moderate version.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So what are the vows all about?
Well, they're about aligning our actions with our deepest values. Ahimsa is the most well-known, of course.
Ahimsa, nonviolence. That's pretty much synonymous with Jainism, right?
Yeah, but it's not just about avoiding physical harm. It's a much deeper concept. It's about respecting all forms of life, recognizing our interconnectedness with every being on this planet.
So kind of like radical empathy in action.
Exactly. And to really get to the heart of it, we have to dive into 2 fundamental concepts in Jain philosophy, Ajiva and Jiva.
The Jiva and Jiva. Okay, those sound important. Break them down for us.
Sure. Ajiva refers to matter, the non-living stuff that makes up the universe. And Jiva refers to the soul, the conscious essence that animates all living beings.
So Jiva is like the physical stuff, and Jiva is the spiritual side.
You got it. And according to Jainism, the universe is this constant interplay between these 2 forces.
A dance between matter and soul. I like that. But how does that work exactly? How do Ajiva and Jiva interact?
Okay, so imagine this. The soul, or Jiva, is kind of trapped in this cycle of birth and death, rebirth and death again.
It's stuck in this endless loop.
Right. And the reason for this is that the soul gets attached to matter, to Ajiva, to the physical world, to possessions, to our bodies even.
So it's like our souls are weighed down by all this stuff.
Exactly. And this attachment creates karma, which keeps us bound to this cycle of rebirth. The goal of Jainism is to break free from this cycle, to untangle the soul from matter and achieve liberation.
So that's where moksha comes in, that ultimate freedom, the end of suffering, the realization of our true nature.
Right. And Jainism provides a path to get there, a way to purify the soul through the Ratnatraya.
The Ratnatraya. Okay, now we're getting into some serious terminology here.
It's simpler than it sounds. It just means 3 jewels.
3 jewels. Okay, what are they?
Right belief, right knowledge, and right action. These are the 3 pillars of spiritual progress in Jainism.
So it's like a 3-pronged approach to spiritual growth.
Precisely. And it's a holistic system.
It makes a lot of sense. But these 3 jewels, they're not just lofty ideas, are they? I mean, how do we actually put them into practice in our everyday lives?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? And that's where the beauty of Jainism lies. It's a practical philosophy. Right belief is about understanding the Jain worldview. Right knowledge is about seeking truth and wisdom. And right action is about living in alignment with those principles.
So it's about integrating our beliefs, our knowledge, and our actions, all working together.
Yes. It's a path of constant self-reflection and refinement.
Fascinating. So we've got this incredible tradition emerging in ancient India, and it's like a whole new way of thinking compared to the dominant Vedic religion. Were they just 2 different paths up the same mountain? Or was Jainism more of a departure, a rejection of the old ways?
Now, that's a great question, and it leads us right into the heart of what made Jainism so revolutionary. You know, it's amazing how Jainism spread. Not through conquest or force, but through the power of its ideas. It really makes you think.
Yeah, like a ripple effect. Just these teachings traveling outward, influencing people from all walks of life. No armies, no empires pushing it. Just the sheer force of its message.
Right. It's a testament to the power of ideas and the commitment of those who live by them.
So how did it actually spread? Was it like word of mouth?
Yeah.
Did they have pamphlets back then?
Well, Mahavir himself was a charismatic teacher. He traveled all over ancient India, sharing his insights, attracting followers who resonated with his message.
Okay, so he was kind of like the original influencer.
Huh. Yeah, I guess you could say that. And after Mahavira, his disciples, the Ganadharas, they took on the task of preserving and spreading his teachings.
So they were like the keepers of the flame, making sure that Mahavira's message wasn't lost.
Exactly. And then you have figures like Chandragupta Maurya, an emperor who renounced his throne to embrace the Jain path. Talk about a powerful example.
Yeah, that's a story that really speaks volumes. An emperor giving up all that power and wealth to pursue a life of simplicity and spiritual growth.
Right. It shows how deeply these teachings can transform a person, no matter their position in society.
It's inspiring. But let's not forget the unsung heroes of this movement. The Jain monks who traveled far and wide, spreading these ideas through their own example.
Absolutely. They walked the walk, embodying the principles of nonviolence, compassion, and simplicity.
No fancy robes or elaborate rituals, just living their truth and inspiring others to do the same.
Right. Their lives were their message, and it clearly resonated with people across India.
It's amazing how this ancient tradition traveled through time and across geographical boundaries. But now, centuries later, in a world that's so different, so fast-paced, so driven by technology and consumerism, does Jainism still hold up?
That's the big question, isn't it? But here's the thing. The core values of Jainism are timeless. They speak to the challenges we face today, even more so in our modern world.
So, it's not just some ancient philosophy gathering dust. It's actually got something to say about how we live our lives today.
Absolutely. Nonviolence, compassion, simplicity, respect for all living beings. These are principles that are more relevant than ever. Think about the state of our planet, the conflicts and divisions in our societies.
Yeah, it's like we need a dose of Jain wisdom now more than ever.
Right. Jainism challenges us to look inward, to examine our own actions and how they impact the world around us. It reminds us that even small choices can have big consequences.
Like the butterfly effect. A tiny flap of wings can eventually cause a hurricane on the other side of the world.
Exactly. Our actions have a ripple effect, and Jainism encourages us to be mindful of that.
Okay, so Jainism is calling for this radical shift in how we live and interact with the world. But with all the pressures and distractions of modern life, how do we even begin to put these principles into practice? It seems like a pretty tall order.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Oh.
And it starts with awareness. Let's take ahimsa, for example. You don't have to become a pacifist or never raise your voice. It's about cultivating a deeper sense of compassion, recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings.
So being more mindful of how we treat others. choosing kindness and understanding, even when it's hard.
Exactly. And then there's aparigraha, the principle of non-attachment, non-possessiveness.
Oh, that's a tough one,
Right.
especially in our consumerist culture, where we're constantly bombarded with messages to buy more, own more, upgrade everything.
It's a challenge for sure, but it starts with becoming aware of the difference between our needs and our wants.
So like asking ourselves, do I really need this new gadget, or am I just caught up in the hype?
Exactly. It's about consciously simplifying our lives, focusing on experiences rather than material possessions, and finding contentment in what we already have.
It's like decluttering not just our homes, but our minds as well, letting go of that constant craving for more.
Right. It's a shift in perspective, a reorientation of our values. And it's about finding true fulfillment from within rather than seeking it in external things.
It makes a lot of sense, but it definitely goes against the grain of our modern culture.
It does. But it's a path that leads to greater freedom and happiness. And speaking of letting go, Jainism has a unique perspective on death and what happens afterward.
Yeah, it's not about an ending, but a transition, right? Like shedding an old skin and moving on to something new.
Exactly. Death isn't seen as the end, but as a transition. The shedding of the physical body as the soul moves on to its next rebirth.
And it's not just random, right? Our actions in this life shape what happens next.
Right. It's all about karma, the consequences of our choices. It determines the quality of our next life.
So it's like we're planting seeds. If we sow kindness and compassion, we reap the benefits in this life and the next.
Precisely. And it's not about living in fear of punishment or reward. It's about understanding that our actions have consequences that extend beyond this lifetime. It's about taking responsibility for our choices and striving to live in a way that creates positive karma.
Makes you think. One concept that really resonated with me was anekantavada, the idea that truth is multifaceted. Like, no single perspective can capture the whole picture.
Anekantavada is so relevant, especially in today's world. It encourages us to approach everything with humility, to recognize that our own perspective is just one piece of the puzzle. We're all limited by our experiences, our biases.
So instead of clinging to our beliefs and dismissing other viewpoints, it's about listening with an open mind and acknowledging that we might not have all the answers.
Right. It's a radical shift in thinking. It's an antidote to dogma and intolerance, fostering dialogue and understanding instead of conflict and division.
It's a powerful reminder that there's always more to learn, more to understand. And speaking of learning, let's bring it back to the UPSC exam. It's not just about memorizing facts, right? It's about connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. The UPSC exam tests your analytical skills. So when you're studying Jainism, don't just focus on dates and names. Delve into its core principles, understand its historical evolution, see how it influenced Indian society, and how it connects to other traditions.
So like understanding how Jainism challenged societal norms, its contributions to philosophy and ethics, how it shaped art, architecture, literature, it's all connected.
Right. And don't forget the comparisons. The UPSC loves to ask you to compare and contrast different religions and philosophies. Be prepared to discuss the similarities and differences between Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism.
It's like a mental workout for your brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Building those analytical muscles, seeing the connections, understanding the nuances.
Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to address something that might be on people's minds as they're preparing for the UPSC exam.
You mean the fact that Jainism might seem like a relatively small religion compared to, say, Hinduism or Islam?
Yeah. Does its size diminish its importance, especially from a historical and cultural perspective?
Not at all. In fact, Jainism's impact on Indian thought and culture has been profound. Its emphasis on nonviolence, its contributions to philosophy and ethics, its influence on art and architecture, it's all there.
It's like this hidden gem that often gets overlooked. But for those who take the time to explore it, Jainism offers a unique and valuable perspective on life.
Exactly. And for those preparing for the UPSC exam, understanding Jainism isn't just about checking a box. It's about expanding your horizons, appreciating the diversity of Indian thought, and developing the analytical skills that are needed to excel. It's about seeing how this ancient tradition continues to influence and inspire us today.
Okay, so we've explored the history, the philosophy, the practices, even how Jainism can be a secret weapon for your UPSC prep. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I gotta leave you with something to really chew on, something that might just shift your whole perspective.
Ooh, I like where this is going. Lay it on us.
It's the Jain concept of Sadvata. Ever heard of it?
Shadvada.
Oh yeah, this is a big one. It's all about understanding the limitations of our own perspective, acknowledging that truth can be multifaceted.
So it's like saying, hey, maybe I don't have the whole picture. Maybe there's more to this than I can see right now.
Exactly. It's a powerful antidote to dogma and closed-mindedness. Sadvada reminds us that we're all coming from different places with different experiences and biases shaping our views.
So instead of clinging to our beliefs and shutting down anyone who disagrees, it's about being open to other perspectives, even those that challenge our own.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that truth can be complex and nuanced, and that no one person or ideology has a monopoly on it.
It's about humility, right? Admitting that we might not have all the answers, and that's okay.
Right. And it's about being willing to learn from others, to engage in respectful dialogue, even when we disagree.
So, for all our listeners out there, especially those gearing up for the UPSC exam, remember this concept of Sadvada. It's not just a philosophical idea. It's a way of approaching knowledge, a way of being in the world.
It's about being curious, open-minded, and willing to challenge your own assumptions.
Don't just passively absorb information. Question everything. Seek out diverse perspectives, and be prepared to have your mind blown.
Because that's where the real learning happens, when we step outside of our comfort zones and embrace the complexity of truth.
Beautifully put. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of Jainism.
We've covered a lot of ground, from its ancient origins to its modern relevance, from the intricacies of karma and rebirth to the practical applications of nonviolence and non-attachment.
We've explored its philosophical underpinnings, its impact on Indian society, its art, its architecture, even its relevance for cracking that UPSC exam.
But remember, this is just the beginning of your own exploration.
Keep that curiosity burning, keep asking questions, and keep seeking wisdom wherever you can find it.
Jainism, with its emphasis on self-discovery, compassion, and the pursuit of truth, offers a profound and inspiring roadmap for that journey.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those minds open.
Happy exploring.
See ya.